Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our attendees joining us today for this latest Data Science Central webinar. This is Bill Voorhees, your host. I'm the editorial director with Data Science Central, and I'm also chief data scientist for Data Magnum. I'd like to start off our event today by thanking Ultrix for sponsoring today's event. Ultrix is a longtime supporter of the Data Science Central community, and we're honored to have them sponsoring our event today. Now, past webinars are available on demand at datasciencecentral.com, and if you haven't had the opportunity to view them, I encourage you to take a look. They provide very useful insight into a wide variety of topics of interest to our data science community. Now, today's webinar is entitled Embedded Analytics and Data Science, a Shell Oil Case Study. And before we begin, I'd like to briefly review the format for today's webinar. Today's event will be an hour long. We have 4 presenters who I'll introduce in just a minute. There'll be 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A following the presentation. And today's event is being recorded and will be available on datasciencecentral.com later this afternoon following today's live event. Now, I'd also like to encourage our attendees to provide questions throughout the presentation, and we'll be reviewing and presenting them on your behalf during the Q&A portion of today's event. Well, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Chris Bridge with Shell Oil, Brian Durking and Numan Fakar with Databricks, and Raman Kaler with Ultrix. Now, Chris is a senior data engineer at Shell in their Data Science Center of Excellence. Now, for the last 3 years, he's focused on using advanced analytics and data science to produce new insights, applications, and business models based on the huge amount of data Shell's ERP systems generate. Previously, he was with Accenture as a data subject matter expert and solution architect implementing SAP ERP systems. Brian is senior director at Databricks. He's been in the technology industry for over 20 years in roles including product management, product marketing, business development, and partner marketing for companies including Stellent, Oracle, Box, and Ultrix. Brian regularly speaks at conferences and writes blog posts and white papers on analytics. Numan is Director of ISV Solutions at Databricks, where he helps ISV and OEM partners to architect solutions on the Databricks platform. He had several years of experience in big data and enterprise architecture. And Raman is an Alliance and Product Marketing Manager at Alteryx, where she focuses on defining strategy and executing programs for joint marketing efforts with key strategic partners including Tableau, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft. So everyone, hey, thank you for being with us today. We're looking forward to your presentation. Now, Shell has become a world leader in analytics, driving huge gains in safety and maintenance that saves lives and resources. And with a limited number of data scientists in the world, Shell realized that in order to maintain and scale their analytics success, they needed to expand their capabilities of the business analysts. So in today's Data Science Central webinar, you'll see how Shell uses Ultrix plus Azure Databricks to address the biggest barriers to their success, and you'll learn how to design an analytics stack that leverages self-service analytics and allows users to do data science at massive scale they require, bridge the skills gap data analysts have, and empower them to set up, configure, and maintain advanced analytic engines such as Apache Spark, create a trust-based analytic culture where data scientists can craft reusable models that allow analysts to repeatedly run them with new data sets. So here you'll learn why Shell brought these 2 platforms together and how the collaboration improves the insight process. Then see Ultrix and Azure Databricks in action together to understand how your organization can replicate these successes as well. So Chris, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can begin whenever you're ready to go.
That's great. Hope you can hear me. And thank you for the fantastic introduction as well. It's a pleasure to be here today. So I will just start off just with a quick cautionary note, just to say, anything which is presented today or anything that I say, please don't make any purchasing decisions based on that. So just a quick cautionary note there. Just to introduce myself again. So yeah, as we said, my name's Chris Bridge. So I work as a senior data engineer in a team called the Data Science Center of Excellence as part of Shell. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is three things. Firstly, just to actually tell you a bit more about the team, the Data Science Center of Excellence, kind of what we do, how we fit into the bigger picture. I'm also going to talk about kind of why bringing Ultrix and Databricks together is like tremendously important for us and how we see this as being a kind of key enabler in the future. And then I also wanted to talk through some sort of real life use cases of where we see this sort of technology being applied to kind of projects and work that we're looking at or is kind of in progress at the moment. So just to start off with a little bit about the team as well, and kind of a bit higher than that, just Shell's overall digital strategy. So our digital strategy is basically to have a coherent approach across Shell to realize and accelerate value through digital transformation, which is led by the business and supported by the Digital Center of Excellence. And the Data Science Center of Excellence is kind of a core part of that team. So we have several key design principles in the digital area. I won't talk about all of them, but some of the key ones is that, the customer and the user, this is really central. So we're always asking the question, like, what is the value for the customer or the user? And really, we want to really understand what's happening and make sure we can kind of leverage proven solutions. Obviously, data is a valuable asset. This is a really key one for our team. So we want to make sure that we make the right decisions for Shell. We want to have a cross-business mindset. Our team is one that actually sits across the whole organization at Shell. So we do work and projects in kind of the upstream businesses, the downstream businesses. We support all of the different global functions. So we're kind of doing projects across the board. So we want to make sure that data is transparent. It's available to really facilitate decision making, and can be monetized as well where possible, and really support those business processes. And one that's becoming really key as well is that the business owns digital. So we want the businesses to live and breathe digital in their business. We try to actively promote this and kind of take certain businesses to other businesses, show them what they're doing, show them what our team are doing, etc. And really, act our way into the future. Speed is the essence here. So where the risk is acceptable, we want to really promote experimentation and kind of a rapid learning approach as well. So in terms of the actual Data Science Center of Excellence, so as I said, this is a team that sits across kind of all of Shell's businesses. So we're doing work and projects across all of those, and I'll talk a bit more in a moment about the type of projects that we do. But what are our kind of strategic objectives in this team? So we want to make sure that we really select foundational technologies. So we have something called the Digitalization Lab. So this is kind of a test bed for cutting edge technology, tools, techniques, and kind of users from all across Shell can kind of subscribe to this lab and really get their hands on those and get up and running as quickly as possible. But we also want to make sure that we can actually, scale and grow a production platform that will meet the needs of advanced analytics across the whole community in Shell. And we want to be able to, importantly, translate proof of concept projects into kind of supported business services and leveraging a standard production platform. Also, the art of the possible. This is like really important for our team. So, inspiring the businesses around Shell, what they can do with their data, the insights they can get, how quickly we can apply data science and machine learning and other techniques and kind of rapidly give them insights. So we really want to show them, the art of the possible, and we do this through the execution of what we call proof of concept projects. These are projects with a kind of a very short time scale. We're trying to prove the value very quickly, that speed is the essence as well. But also we want to make sure that we prove the business value there. And then, yeah, we want to, assure and make sure that we can extend the business cases from proof of concept into production as well. And then in terms of facilitating the best practice, so this is also a key thing from the Center of Excellence. So we want to be creating best practice. We want to be learning best practice from the industry and pushing this out across our whole kind of analytics network within Shell. So we're really trying to raise the profile of data science and advanced analytics and develop a greater sense of community across the whole organization, because obviously it's a really big company. And we want to, bring together both technical, commercial, data science, and tooling really closely integrated together. So just in terms of the actual projects we do, these come in all different kinds of flavors and forms. So we have kind of the proof of concepts that I just mentioned, which might be 3 weeks, they might be 6 weeks, they might be 3 months, but very short timescales where we're just trying to get to a minimum viable product as quickly as possible, and then perhaps a couple of releases of that before we then would kind of work with our IT partners to then scale that up as a fully production supported solution. On the other end of the scale, we're also running a lot of things like hackathons, where they're like 3-day events, 4-day events, and we just go, we send some of our team of data engineers, data scientists out to areas of the business. We have a kind of a theme, a use case, and we see what value that we can prove in just a short period of time. And we kind of have this funnel of opportunities coming from the business that we are making decisions about. In terms of like skills and capabilities, so in the Center of Excellence, we're trying to actually bring together lots of different skills. So obviously the core is the data science skills. So this includes traditional data science and mathematics, but now also areas in machine vision, natural language processing, and machine learning. And we also have teams of data engineers as well, really working on those data pipelines and kind of supporting the data science work. And we also, what's key to all our projects is being able to get that data science work in front of the end users. So we also have that data visualization specialization as well, where it's really important to have a kind of the final user interface that the users will interact with. So I mentioned before something that we call the Digitalization Lab. So the Digitalization Lab, anyone at Shell can kind of subscribe to the lab. They join our network, they get all the kind of support and the help of the community, and they also get access to lots of different kind of applications that they can use to do their data science work. Some of them are kind of mentioned on the screen here. And really this is the kind of digitalization playground where we try to go from, spin up these proof of concepts really quickly and give everybody the opportunity. We have more than 500 users across Shell businesses using these tools, and really what we want is a close integration between all of these tools as possible so that it's almost seamless. So this is where we come on to kind of the Ultrix and Databricks integration. So on the Ultrix side of things, sorry, maybe I've skipped one too far. So on the Ultrix side of things, so we have lots and lots of users using Ultrix now. They absolutely love it. The easy to use graphical user interface for creating data pipelines they love. They're building amazing analytics solutions, but at the moment they're kind of not too keen on coding. So that user interface really suits them, and they are just starting to use things like R and Python. And we do use Ultrix to productionize data science code, but sometimes we're pushing the limits. So, sometimes our biggest constraint for scale is kind of running models and training jobs and things using Ultrix. So having that Databricks integration is kind of a really key enabler for us on this. So, we can take users who are actually unfamiliar with Databricks and, the APIs to use it and orchestrate it, and we can give them a tool they are familiar with, but they can still use the scale of Databricks to do the data science portions. And really, we feel that this integration is really key for kind of forging the next set of citizen data scientists at Shell. So I'm just going to briefly walk through some use cases to kind of bring this to life for you a little bit, and then we're going to be getting onto the demo quite shortly as well. So this is one particular use case. Don't worry too much about what all the boxes are on the screen, etc. But this is a project that we did for the global commercial business, so the lubricant supply chain. And really it's all around kind of optimization, so optimizing the formulations of our products, optimizing them for quality, optimizing them depending on constraints in the supply chain and kind of supply and demand and those kind of things. So, pretty much all of the data that we need to do a project like this is sitting within a database called SAP HANA. We use Ultrix to orchestrate that data and do all of the kind of blending of that data and all of our business logic. And this is all done through the in-database tools, so the actual work is pushed down into the database. But when we get to the point where we need to run some of our optimizations, and this is the kind of data science code, it's quite complicated and it's written in R. And what we want to do is kind of outsource that, because we have, lots and lots of optimizations to do, sometimes more than 100,000 up to 1 million. So this is only a very small part of what we're doing, but it has a massive scale. So we want to be able to outsource that piece to something like Databricks, but whilst it's integrated with the rest of our workflow, which is built in Ultrix. And just to give you a sort of view as to what one of those workflows might look like in Ultrix, obviously this is a very zoomed out view of one of our workflows on this project. And really, I'm not going to go through it, but the point is to illustrate that the optimization bit that we need the massive scale for is actually only a small component of a much bigger workflow that is all built within Ultrix and all working on the top of SAP HANA. So it's not always the case that with our use cases we can just do everything in Databricks. So that's really the point here. Another use case, and we've actually talked about this particular use case on the Spark Summit and Ultrix Inspire several times before. This is one of our kind of inventory optimization tools called IOTA. And again, to do this tool, we are using Ultrix to basically orchestrate the end-to-end pipeline. So it's getting the data from SAP HANA. It's kind of loading this into the cloud. It's orchestrating all of these jobs that we're doing in Databricks with multiple API calls. Then it's transferring the result back onto the internal network, saving it back into SAP HANA, and then we have all of our visualizations and the user interface. So at the moment, this integration is something that we have had to build ourselves from scratch using API calls, REST API calls with Databricks. But this new integration that we now have available within Ultrix means we can actually do away with all of that. The Ultrix will take care of all of this integration, and all we need to do is stream data out of our on-premise databases into Databricks, run the code, which we can do within Ultrix as well as the orchestration engine, and then save the result back on-premise as well. So this is more of an orchestration scenario. And finally, just another use case. So this is something in the trading world. We call it Power Markets Stack model. It's about price forecasting. And again, this is big workflows that we built in Ultrix that are pulling internal data around prices, internal weather data. They're also doing hundreds of API calls to external weather vendors. They are blending all of this data together, storing it in the cloud. And then at the moment, all of the optimizations that we need to do, of which there are more than 12,000, are running within Ultrix on the Ultrix server. And these take about 160 minutes to run in total. And then once we have that output is again saved back into the cloud, and then we have our user interface. So this was a prime example where when we took the same optimization code and we massively parallelize it in Databricks, the thing that was taking 160 minutes, we can do in probably less than 30 seconds. But we can still use Ultrix to do the overall integration. It's just the code now, rather than running it in Ultrix, we can run it in a different tool, which will outsource it to Databricks. It will run it on a very large cluster very quickly, and then we can get that result written back into the data lake store. So they were the kind of use cases that I wanted to talk through. So obviously we welcome your questions at the end, but I think I will hand over now to the Ultrix and Databricks folks.
Thank you so much for that overview of the Shell Analytics stack, Chris. Next, I'd like to briefly touch on what Ultrix can do for you as well. So as you can see here, the reality of data and analytics today is complex, to say the least. There are big challenges with people, processes, and technology. Lines of business are struggling to find and manipulate data so that they can be visualized, while IT is struggling with a vast variety and volume of data out there, and how to securely govern its usage. And finally, data scientists are struggling to get their analytic models into production. This is where Ultrix steps in. Ultrix helps companies turn their data into actionable insights, which in turn help improve their businesses. While we're known for data prep and blend, we've extended into an end-to-end analytics platform that helps all data professionals easily manage their data and analytic models across the enterprise. Ultrix is unique in the simple fact that we provide a unified analytics experience that empowers all data workers to quickly and easily move back and forth between analytic tasks. So everything from discovering the right data assets and collaborating with fellow analysts to connecting, prepping, and blending all of your data, no matter the location or size, and then quickly moving into developing advanced analytic models in a code-free and code-friendly environment. Once models are created, we help deploy them into production in real time. And best of all, we help automate your processes so that you can build once and repeat never. Before I turn it over to Brian from the Databricks team, I want to cover Ultrix plus Microsoft specifically. Most businesses recognize data engineers as being responsible for working the data, i.e. ingesting it with Azure Data Factory, landing in Azure Data Lake, and perhaps preparing the data with Azure Databricks before finally moving structured data to the SQL data warehouse. From here, data scientists typically further analyze the data in Spark with R and Python to build a richer data set that can be passed on to other systems. What Ultrix adds, and what's so exciting, is that order of magnitude more data analysts can solve the org's analytical problems with Ultrix using the central data platform, while continuing to collaborate with data engineers and data scientists throughout the process. For example, a data scientist can create a model in Python, wrap it in an Ultrix macro, and make it available to all line of business analysts who are now empowered to conduct analysis independently. And when the data analyst does need the data science team, questions are much more well thought out and everyone benefits. Getting the business and IT to work closer makes everyone more productive, avoids misunderstandings, and more insights are generated. And this is how Ultrix and Microsoft can help you create a data-driven organization. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Brian.
Thanks, Raman. As we look at Microsoft Azure, what we see are a number of different core scenarios around advanced analytics, streaming analytics, and data warehousing. And if we look at the advanced analytics pattern in particular, we see how data is ingested and stored, prepped and trained, and then served for consumption. And as you saw in Raman's slide, Shell's using Ultrix to orchestrate the process and to empower and enable their business users. So as Chris mentioned, in a world of limited resources around data science, Shell's found a way to scale their analytics practice by enabling business analysts to drive the process for many of these analytics models. In this case, they leverage Azure Databricks for the awesome scale it can provide. Databricks was founded by the team that originally created Spark, and while Apache Spark is recognized as the premier analytics engine, with Azure Databricks it's been tuned to be 10 to 100 times faster than vanilla Spark. And the Azure Databricks runtime provides security and performance and the ability to auto-scale, so you can spin up and down clusters as needed, and that happens automatically. And you can truly take advantage of the benefit of the cloud. You're not paying for idle compute time like companies do when they run their big projects on premises. So as we look at the folks who are involved using Azure Databricks, at many companies, and Shell's included, there are still some analytics problems that need to be solved by data scientists. And at Shell, those data scientists use Azure Databricks to run these processes and jobs. For data scientists and data engineers, Azure Databricks provides an integrated workspace in the form of notebooks. When we think about, how an analytics project works, you start off with a question, you learn some things, then you pivot, to another question, and you iterate through this process until you finally find an answer. It's that fast iteration of teams, more than analytics performance, that truly accelerates innovation, and Azure Databricks brings both. So with the integration of Databricks and Ultrix, data scientists can make those analytics models available in Ultrix, so business users can use them as tools. Newman's going to show us a demo of this in just a few minutes here. And so business analysts can take those models, they can use them inside of Ultrix, and they configure them to solve different problems by being able to select new data sets, for instance. If you're really interested in this, one thing that I might recommend is Spark and AI Summit in London, October 2nd through 4th. Will give you a chance to learn more about Ultrix, Databricks, and Shell, as all of us will be there talking about advanced analytics and how we're addressing this, as well as Microsoft. Microsoft is a Diamond sponsor, so highly recommend that as the next action. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Newman for the demo.
Ready. Thanks, Brian. Can you folks see my screen? So there might be a little bit of a lag while we get there. So the scenario that we're going to talk about today is a retail financial services scenario. And it's if you imagine a company like Shell issues branded credit cards, which can be used at gas stations and gas pumps and other retail locations. The idea behind today's demo will be, well, what if such a company wanted to be able to build a service to detect fraud on those transactions, and also create a 360-degree view of customer activity that happens on those cards to be able to serve the customers better and also upsell and cross-sell products. So that's going to be the use case and business goal of today's demo. And it's really the current challenges that that a customer like that might have, or well, all the credit card transactions come into an on-prem enterprise data warehouse. We're going to simulate SQL Server as the enterprise data warehouse today, and that warehouse is at near capacity. So if you want to build a fraud analytics service and do a large customer 360 project, typically that's a big data problem. And if you have an enterprise data warehouse that's running at capacity, you would need to augment into some sort of a big data infrastructure to be able to do a project like that. So we'll see how that gets addressed via Databricks. The second challenge is while the customer wants to do a big data project, they may not necessarily have a lot of big data skills or Spark skills in their teams to do things like large-scale data engineering, to be able to join and ETL all of the data to create those 360 views. And we're going to see how Ultrix is going to be leveraged there to empower analysts who don't necessarily have big data skills, but still want to be able to do large-scale data engineering via a drag and drop tool like Ultrix. So before we dive into the demo, I'm just going to quickly give you an overview of the overall architecture of what the demo shows. The transactions we're going to stimulate coming from payments network. The payments network is essentially, various retail locations where customers are using credit cards. Those transactions come into an on-prem EDW, an enterprise data warehouse. This is going to be the SQL Server warehouse. We're going to use Ultrix to do three things here. We're going to move the transactions from the on-prem EDW into Databricks. We're also going to move a bunch of other product and point of sale data and Salesforce data and any other third-party data set that might be useful for building in a fraud analytics model via Ultrix into the Databricks environment. Once the data is made it into Databricks, of course, you want to be able to engineer that data to run ETL pipelines, do cross joins, do filtering, do cleanup and munging of the data. That tends to be about 80% of the work that goes into in building a predictive model, just being able to munge the data. We're going to show how Ultrix will allow you to do that via drag and drop user experience. And then once the data has been engineered in Databricks, we're going to show how you can actually train a fraud model on that data that's been engineered, where the model training is also kicked off from Ultrix and pushed down into Databricks. Ultimately, the end result of all this is essentially information and insight that the business can leverage. We're using a BI tool. We happen to be using Tableau in this demo. You can use any of the BI tools that Databricks supports, Power BI, Looker, and anything that essentially can connect the ODBC, JDBC into Databricks to get insight into the outputs of your data engineering efforts and your machine learning prediction. So that's sort of the overall architecture of the demo. With that, we're going to segue into the demo. So what you're seeing here is the Ultrix Designer product. And I have, give me 1 second, I think I may have changed the screen here. Let me just make it full screen. Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened. There we go. So you're seeing the Ultrix Designer product over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through to 4 workflows that we have developed for this demo. Most of these workflows are going to include the stuff on the left, which is the activity happening in the SQL Server side, and then everything on the right in these red boxes is activity happening on the Azure Databricks side. The lines that you see in between these two environments denote the movement of data between these two environments. So that's going to be sort of the overall style of all of these workflows. Before I take you through these workflows, it will actually be helpful to show you how these workflows have been developed and what that drag and drop experience really looks like. So if you want to, for example, take data from SQL Server and move it into Databricks, and we happen to be using SQL Server as the EDW over here. You can move the data obviously from any of the connectors that Ultrix includes. You really just use this connect and DD operator. You choose your table inside SQL Server where you want to move the data from. Where I'm choosing the transactions table in this demo. You stream the data out of the SQL Server, and then you stream it in. You use the data stream in operator to move it into Databricks. And the data stream in operator is, sort of the first place where you'll see the Databricks connectivity come in. So on each of these operators, you would choose a connection, right, that you want the operator to operate on. I'm choosing the Azure Databricks connection over here. I'll just show you very quickly how this Azure Databricks connection is set up inside Ultrix. It's really very easy. Databricks is listed as a data source inside the Ultrix Designer, and you configure one of the prereqs for being able to use the data source is that you need the Databricks ODBC driver on the same machine as the designer, as where you've got the Ultrix Designer installed. It takes about a minute or two to download it from Databricks documentation and get it set up. Once you have the ODBC driver, then you go about essentially just specifying your connection information here. You put in your Databricks username and password, and that's really all that it takes. To set all this up, it's really maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Once you've set up the connection, then you can start using that Databricks connection with any of the Ultrix operators, ETL operators that you have available over here, or specifically the in-DB operators. So to recap, what we've done is over here we dragged and dropped a SQL Server connection. We chose a table we want to bring into Databricks. And when you use the stream in operator with Databricks, you can say, hey, if you don't want to move the data into a temporary Spark SQL table, or I want to create a new table, or I want to maybe potentially override an existing table I may have. It's really as easy as that. Now, once the data is brought into what happens underneath the covers is that you may want to do a little bit of ETL on that data. So things like filtering, things like aggregations, things like, you may want to join the data, this data with other data sets. And whatever ETL you end up specifying over here, keep in mind that what's going to happen is that all of these operations are going to get pushed down into the as Spark SQL jobs into the Databricks cluster. And so this really enables an analyst to go about doing large-scale ETL. You could be doing this on 2 gigabytes of data or 2 petabytes of data. You're pushing all of that ETL down into from Ultrix into a Databricks cluster at scale, and you're essentially just specifying conditions, join conditions, or little macros here and there to clean up the data as an analyst without having to worry about how that big data infrastructure underneath the cover scales, how it operates. And without really having to deal with the DevOps story behind operating, such a large-scale data engineering infrastructure underneath the covers. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of a taste of how we've built out these workflows that you see over here in the demo. So let's dig in and go through some of these workflows. So we were going to move transactions, credit card transactions data from SQL Server into Databricks. That's what we're doing over here. We're going to connect out to SQL Server Warehouse. We stream the data out of the warehouse, and we stream it into Databricks, just like I showed you in the quick drag and drop example that I built a minute ago. And once the data is inside Databricks, then what we do is, this comes in as a Spark SQL table, and what we do is we go about joining it with a master fact table that's already there in Databricks, and this is expressed via the student operation. And then we go about doing another join to enrich the transactions with some point of sale data, which we've also brought in from SQL Server. And ultimately, we go off and save the enriched data into a Spark SQL table in Databricks. So I know this can be a little overwhelming. It's a lot to take in, but to kind of recap, the main points you want to remember is that, within minutes, what I can do is I can take data that may sit anywhere in the enterprise. We happen to be using SQL Server as an EDW. It could be any connector that you have in Ultrix. And within minutes, I can get that data moved into Databricks, into Spark SQL tables. I can do some basic ETL activity like unions and joins and make it available for analytics as a Spark SQL table in Databricks. The time to value really over here is, as you've seen in minutes via drag and drop experience. And so far, I've not written any code. Let's do something a little bit more sophisticated. So here's another workflow where we are taking product data. The product is essentially a credit card, right? Your actual credit cards that you've issued. And we're moving that into Databricks as well so that we can we can enrich the transactions with product data for the ultimate purpose of doing machine learning on that training. We're essentially building a training data set and a 360 view. So this flow is masking the credit card numbers in Ultrix before it's sent into the cloud. That's a requirement of the CI. So he or she may want those credit card numbers masked before they end up in cloud storage. So Ultrix can make that happen for you very easily. And you'll notice that we're sending it to 2 different tables over here. One of the tables, downstream tables, is going to serve the BI tool, which could be Power BI, Tableau, or what have you. The other Spark SQL table is going to serve the machine learning team. And you're probably wondering, well, why are you using 2 different tables over here? It turns out that BI tools are not very good at dealing with arrays. So one of the pieces of data over here is actually an array. It's a city-state zip array, and we are using an Ultrix ETL operation over here, a formula in DB operation, as you can see over here, to split out that array into 3 separate columns. And this is an example of another example of how you drive large-scale ETL from a UI in Ultrix without really knowing any of the underlying big data programming languages, be it Spark SQL, Python, Scala, or what have you. An analyst can easily express this macro. Could be done on 2 gigs of data, could be done on 2 petabytes of data. The user experience remains the same. And this is a really, really powerful thing to remember, because you can express all of this large-scale ETL without having to worry about the entire DevOps story of how that cluster in Databricks is going to auto-scale to make these pipelines run for you smoothly, how many machines you're going to need, so on and so forth. All that is abstracted out. Databricks will take care of that scaling problem for you to do this data engineering at scale. And then Ultrix takes care of the fact that you can express this via a UI without having to necessarily learn the entire big data skill set. So that's a little bit more of a sophisticated ETL that we wanted to show to you. The last piece of the data engineering piece of the demo is enriching the transactions data with Salesforce data. And you can see I've actually clicked play on this workflow. So this is running live on my Azure Databricks cluster over here. We're reaching out to Salesforce, and we're enriching the transaction tables that we have created so far, that we've moved from SQL Server with CRM data, so that ultimately we've got a proper Customer 360 view both on the BI tool side and on the machine learning side. And this flow is running right now. It will, as the flow runs, you'll see these green boxes which indicate which operators are actually active right now, and you get to see the kinds of things that are happening underneath the covers on the Databricks cluster. So it looks like it's completed. I will later on actually go into the Databricks cluster and show you some of these jobs that got executed. So before we do that, let's just take a look at now, well, what does that final data set look like on which we're going to do some machine learning? What does this engineered 360 customer 360 data set look like? So it's a typical customer 360 data set. It's got the customer's information from sales, so that we got from Salesforce. It's got information on transactions, when those transactions happen, the amount, and where they happen, the point of sale enrichment that we did. So this is a pretty enriched data set, which includes, data that's been joined from data sources at large scale from multiple places. The most important thing from a machine learning perspective is that this has got a label called fraud report, yes or no. And so far, the company has been essentially using humans to indicate whether a transaction was fraudulent or not. And there's a human who's been adding, a fraud report in your enterprise data warehouse. We're going to use this as a labeled data set in a supervised machine learning scenario in the next flow that I'm going to show to you, where we're going to train a machine learning model to recognize fraud based on this label. And this could be potentially terabytes of data that you're training on. And this essentially becomes the key. This label becomes the key to actually building a fraud model at scale. This concludes the data engineering piece of the demo. We're going to now shift gears into the machine learning piece of it. So now that you have the training data set that you've engineered with Ultrix, how do you actually go about training a machine learning model on Databricks, where you can push down that machine learning from Ultrix into Databricks? So that's what this flow is about. To do that, the starting point is a new operator inside the developer tab over here called the Apache Spark code operator. I'm just going to quickly drag and drop it here. I've already got it built out here, but I wanted to show you how you configure one of these. It's really very easy. You drag and drop the Apache Spark code operator. And what this means is that you desire to run some Python, Scala, or hard code on a Databricks cluster. You specify the actual connection, the Databricks cluster that you want to run the code on. This connection is different from the ODBC connection that we had configured earlier. Let me just quickly show you how to configure one of these. So it's really very easy. You say out of the data sources, you choose the Apache Spark on Databricks data source, and you go about specifying the typical things that you would on this connection, such as, hey, my Databricks instance is running on this cloud. It could be Azure or AWS, the region, the token, the actual cluster that you want to run the job on, and what kind of session you want, Scala, Python, or R. And we also give you the capability to attach libraries if your job actually depends on some libraries in the form of jars or Python, eggs, and so on and so forth. so that those libraries are also available, or they get pushed down into the cluster when this job runs. Again, it takes about a minute, maybe a minute or 2 minutes to just set up this connection. And once you have it, then you can go about pushing essentially Python, R, or Scala jobs down into the Databricks cluster at scale. So I've got this pre-configured here in this flow. Let's take a look at what this code is doing. So the cool thing here is I've actually got a Python connection configured over here, and this looks like a typical Spark ML-lib Python job, which is going to use a decision tree algorithm to build a machine learning pipeline on the training data set that we have engineered with Ultrix. The training data set, as you can see, is being input visually over here. You can choose to do that by just dragging and dropping a data set and saying, hey, I want that to be input into this model. The output of the model is going to be the predictions, and you can express that from the UI as well. Because you've got the full power of Spark code over here, I'm choosing to also actually just load the data set using a Spark SQL command into a data frame. So the flexibility is there. You can choose to do it either way. Main thing to remember is that, hey, this is how you go about inserting machine learning code into your Alteryx analytical pipelines. Now, you go about basically loading the training data set. You pass the data set into the machine learning pipeline, which is what we're doing here. This will kick off the model training on the cluster. When the model is trained, it comes back, and you want to be able to score the model against transactions, today's transactions that have come in. I'm using the transactions we've been giving to the Tableau dashboard over here to actually do the scoring. And the output of the scoring are, of course, the predictions. That this data set over here, the predictions data set, will tell you, hey, these are out of today's transactions, these are the ones that I think are actually fraudulent, as predicted by my machine learning model. And I write out those predictions back to a Spark SQL table. And again, you can choose to do that via the UI as well. The flexibility is there to use either path. One of the things that you're probably thinking is, well, if you have a machine learning team or data science team, they may not write, of course, build out the ML models from here. They certainly can, but some of them may be more comfortable in their respective environments, be it the notebook environment inside Databricks, be it their favorite R or R environment, or whatever their data science tool happens to be. So in those situations, we make it easy for you to be able to import the code that you're getting from your machine learning team in the form of notebooks or a file or even a URL, and that allows you to, as an analyst, plug in those models into your workflows very, very easily as you get them from your machine learning team. So that's a very important thing to remember. Let's actually get this running on the cluster. So I'm going to click on play. What happens is now this machine learning model is going to get trained on the Databricks cluster, and this is a good segue to actually show you what's happening on the cluster. So I'm now inside my Azure Databricks environment, right? And I'm actually in the clusters view. This is the view and test cluster on which I've been pushing down all of my Databricks jobs from Ultrix. Let's take a quick look at well, what were all the data engineering jobs that I pushed down? For example, I had enriched that enriched the data set with Salesforce data. There should be some Spark SQL that should have come in here recently, and you can look at the timestamp. That's recent, probably from 5 or 6 minutes ago, where you can see a bunch of Spark SQL activity happening here, which actually enriched the transactions data with Salesforce data, and this is evidence of how Ultrix is pushing down all that ETL activity into this cluster at scale. We also just a minute ago kicked off that machine learning pipeline, and if I click on jobs over here, I should see some machine learning jobs being run, or various jobs that pertain to the machine learning activity. You can see the timestamp. It's pretty much right now at this moment, and you can see this random forest model over here that is currently running on the cluster, and my model is being trained as we speak, right? So So this will take its time to run. It's a large data set, so the model is going to get trained. In the interest of time, I'm going to now switch to, well, what is the final output, right, of all of this? Ultimately, you want to be able to give the business, right, insights into all of the activity, right, data engineering and machine learning activity that you've done with the platform, and that's where the BI investments you may have made in the enterprise come in. So we happen to be using Tableau here. It could be Power BI, Click, Looker, or whatever your favorite tool is, or your custom dashboard, because Databricks allows you to essentially get the data out of Spark SQL tables using ODBC, JDBC connectors, and you can plug in your favorite tool, visualization tool, to do so. So the first dashboard you see here is that Customer 360 view, where you can see that, hey, these are the top 10 defrauded customers and top 10 fraudulent transactions. This view is showing you the state of fraud as it was labeled by humans, right? When we actually engineered that large data set across multiple sources using an ETL pipeline from Ultrix being pushed down into Databricks. The second dashboard over here is the output of that machine learning algorithm that's currently running. That algorithm can be inserted into a pipeline that runs at a certain interval. It could be daily or multiple times a day, and it keeps on outputting that, hey, out of all the new transactions I've seen, here are the ones that the machine learning algorithm thinks are fraudulent. And over here you can see today's top defrauded customer happens to be this gentleman called Ellen Russell, unfortunately, and he's lost this much money potentially to fraud. This is really about being able to visualize the outcome of all of that large-scale machine learning activity, so that the business can actually get insights into fraud activity as being detected by a machine learning algorithm. You've taken out the lead time that may have been required for an analyst to go about detecting fraud, and the algorithm, it catches things that the human eye, right, might not be able to catch. So you've gone from being a business who is sort of just painting the picture as is to a predictive business, right? To recap, wrapping this up, what we've showed to you today, right, is really the ability to do very large-scale data engineering and machine learning workloads without having to worry about the DevOps side of it and how all of that infrastructure scales, unifying it under one platform, the engineering and ML activity with one API, being driven by a very easy-to-use drag-and-drop user experience in Ultrix, where you can take existing skill sets and use them and leverage those skill sets to do big data projects, and ultimately how the business derives value from the output of all of that. So I'll stop there and hand it back over.
Fantastic. Thank you, Newman. And in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you to take a look at this slide and see all the various ways you can interact with both Ultrix and Azure Databricks. A follow-up email containing the recording as well as the various calls to action will be sent out, so please be on the lookout for that. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Bill for Q&A.
Well, Chris, Raman, Newman, and Brian, hey, thank you so much for that really excellent presentation. So we'll get started with today's Q&A, and I want to thank the audience for their participation. We had a lot of questions that have come in, so we'll do our best to get through all of them in the time remaining. So during this Q&A session, I'll leave up this screen with contact information for our speakers if you'd like to contact them following today's webinar. Also joining us to help with Q&A will be Digan Parikh, a product expert from Alteryx. So let's get started. Chris, our audience knows Alteryx primarily as a blending, cleaning, prep, and analytic platform, but you apparently also use it to allow your business users to orchestrate work. Can you talk a little bit about that difference?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we do, and we have a huge number of use cases in this particular area. So we actually use something called the Ultrix server. So what you've kind of seen in the demo today is the Ultrix designer, where you actually kind of build the workflows. But one of the great things with Ultrix is once you kind of built that, there's a server version that you can just then schedule your job to run on every hour, every day, every week, every minute if you want to. So we've got a huge number of people throughout the different businesses who have kind of automated things that were extremely manual before, and are able to kind of use this server to schedule those and then basically stop worrying about them. And just the real benefit is they can now actually focus on the output, so they don't spend time doing the manual things anymore, and now they can get focused on the insights from the data and kind of taking it to the next step and trying to apply data science techniques and machine learning and try and generate some new insights rather than just worrying about the manual kind of steps they were doing before.
Right. Well, thank you, Chris. The audience is interested, and by the way, if you've been in this team for 3 years, you must have been there pretty close to the beginning. How did Shell arrive at the combination of Azure and Ultrix? Why not just write everything in Python, for example?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. So I think we do write things in Python. Of course we do. We have a lot of data scientists, and they will have their favorite flavor, either Python and sometimes R. But in order to be able to productionize what they're doing and kind of automate it and schedule it and run it, we need a wrapper around that. We need a platform, and we need something that's kind of robust and scalable. So that's why, for us, the combination of Ultrix, which gives us the full analytics kind of platform to kind of do this work and build these workflows, but also now with the addition of being able to take the scale on the data science code, as you've seen, whether it's written in R, whether it's written in Python or Scala, we can now orchestrate that from within a workflow that's very friendly to everybody, that they understand and that they've already been using. So that's why Ultrix as a tool has really taken off within the business, and that's why I believe that this integration will also be go the same way.
Well, thank you, Chris. Now, the audience was really taken by the fact that not only is there the magic of data science that's helping Shell here, but you've done something pretty extraordinary by building this in such a way that you can let your business analysts and presumably LOB folks utilize this directly. Can you talk a little bit about the difficulties that you had when you started this up and how you maintain your COE analyst partnership?
Yeah, so if we go back 2.5, 3 years, the COE was a very small team, but we have through a lot of very high-profile use cases, things that we've talked about at conferences and things in the past couple of years, we've kind of really proved the value of data science and analytics. We've brought together this set of tools that makes this really easy for the business. We've given them the access to the Digitalization Lab. We've provided them, a network of support and a community of people that they can go to ask questions. We have kind of these Yammer feeds where people ask questions, and generally the question has been answered within 30 minutes, even before I can get to it and answer it. So I think the combination of all of that and the kind of the support wrapper around it has really helped this to take off.
Well, Chris, that's really an extraordinary accomplishment for your organization to have leveraged that out. But Chris, Brian, Newman, Raman, Deegan, thank you for great answers to some very good questions. And for those of you that asked questions today that weren't answered, we'll be sending all the unanswered questions to our speakers and the Ultrix team so they can follow up with you after today's webinar. I have just a few quick announcements. If you'd please mark your calendars for September 18th, and that's our next DSC webinar, How the Role of Data Prep and ETL is Evolving. Also, remember that today's taping will be available for on-demand viewing later today, and you can find that on the home page of Data Science Central in the Webinar tab located at the top of the page. Well, this brings today's webinar to a close. I'd like to thank our audience for their attendance and thoughtful questions. A special thanks again to Ultrix for their sponsorship, and particularly our speakers today, Chris Bridge, Brian Durking, Newman Fakar, and Raman Kaler, for their insights into today's topic. This is Bill Voorhees. I'm very pleased to have been your host for today's event. I look forward to seeing you all again on September 18th. Have a great day.